This is going to work. Hi, everybody.
Hey, how are you?
Morning, good morning.
Good. Good morning. Good morning. Can you see on Zoom? Can you see me if I'm sitting like this?
Yes,
Yes.
Great. Okay, we have there's a big crowd here, so I'm gonna try to talk to the Zoom and yeah, right. Okay. So yeah, so they're pointing out here in the live studio audience that their comments in this room you won't be able to hear from the Zoom unless we use the microphone. But even I don't think that'll work. Yeah. So I'll summarize some of what people say so that we can. Okay, good morning. Good morning. Good to see everybody. Anna, welcome. It's great to be here. I'm so happy that it worked out that I got to fill in for Eve today, although those are big shoes to fill in for, and I'm sure that hope I don't let you down, but I know that she has been moving this group along in amazing ways, and that's really incredible. And part of what I want to do is just hear a little bit, share some, hear from everybody a little bit, some of your experiences, and specifically I wanted to talk about Pesach. I know it's over, it just happened, it's done, thank God. But no, I'm kidding. But actually, Pesach in Israel was interesting because for the first time ever in my entire life, we had one Seder, which was definitely one of the benefits of making Aliyah. We don't have to do the second Seder. My kids from Chicago were visiting us, and I said to them in the afternoon on Pesach, I said, if you guys make Aliyah right now, if you decide right now that you're moving here forever, you won't have to make a Seder tonight. And she said, and what? Kill your mother? That's what Hannah said. So there's a question that I thought about. Not my question; it's a famous question that I think about every year on Passover, and I thought about it again this year. And this year was bothering me too much just to let it go. So I had to delve into a little bit and see what some of the commentaries comment on this particular question. And I found an interesting insight that changed my whole experience with Pesach, which I'm going to share with you. And it's relevant to us now because, there's the old saying is that we made it through Pesach, right? But the question is, did Pesach make it through us? Right, and that's true with all the holidays. Like I made it through Sukkot. That's great. I made it through Sukkot. Did Sukkot make it through me? Did I change from the experience of Pesach in the way that the opportunity of Pesach is designed to allow me to change? Because all the holidays are that way. That's every holiday on the Jewish calendar is about a growth opportunity in a specific, unique way. So Pesach is certainly no different. Pesach, as we know, time of our freedoms, and freedom doesn't just mean physical freedom from the slavery of Zion, but it certainly means much more. That is, as we discuss every year, and as I'm sure you discussed a lot leading up to the holiday with Ethan. And then the question is, what was the breakthrough? What was your breakthrough this year? What was your Passover breakthrough? In what area were you able to find some degree of liberation from whatever the things are that constrain us, that hold us back, that limit us, that limit our growth? So I had a little bit of a Pesach breakthrough this year, and I'm going to share that with you, but then I want to hear from other people as well. So it goes back to this question. The question is, why do we eat matzah? So if you ask anybody Ask any Jew, why do we eat matzah? What's the answer that you're going to get? And don't worry, it's not the wrong answer. It's the right answer, but there's a challenge with the answer. What's the answer? Why do we eat matzah? Okay, but why matzah? Right? Because there wasn't time for the dough to rise. Right? It says it in the Haggadah that the reason why we ate matzah is because we left Egypt in haste and we didn't have time for the dough to rise. Lighter to carry, is it? I guess it is. Well, I don't know what weighs more, a pound of matzah or a pound of challah. Yeah, maybe. Okay, let me read you something over here. So in Exodus chapter 12, so God is telling Moses to instruct the people, speak to the entire assembly of Israel, saying to them, on the 10th of the month, you shall take a lamb. That's ultimately going to be the Paschal lamb, and he goes through all the details of that. And it says you shall eat it partially roasted, cooked in water, roasted over fire. You shall not leave any of it over until the morning. You shall eat it with your loins girded, shoes on your feet, staff in your hand. You shall eat it in haste as a Passover offering. And then it says, this day shall be a remembrance for you. You shall celebrate it as a festival. For 7 day period, you should eat matzah, but on the previous day, you shall nullify all the leavening from your house. And on, and it gives details of the matzah, how you should eat it and everything. Okay. So those are the instructions that God tells Moses to give to the Jewish people. 14 days before Pesach. 14 days before Passover, on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, on the first day of Nisan, God tells Moses to instruct the Jewish people, on the 10th of the month, you're going to take the Paschal lamb, you're going to roast it in this way, and then on the 14th of the month, you're going to eat it, and you're going to eat it together with the matzah. Wait a minute. How does that work? If the reason why we eat matzah is because we left in haste on the 15th of Nisan, and we didn't have time for our dough to rise, then how is Moses telling the Jewish people, in 2 weeks from now, we're going to leave here and you're going to eat matzah? Why? Because you're not going to have time for your dough to rise. So start making it now, right? So start a day before. It doesn't. You see what I'm saying? It doesn't really make sense. We always say that we eat matzah because on Pesach we eat matzah because we had to leave so fast. We think that it was like, okay, guys, we're leaving. Let's go. Break your bread. Everyone started baking bread. There's no time for it to rise. Let's go throw it in the oven. We're leaving. But they were told 2 weeks in advance that they were going to be leaving, and that they will eat matzah when they leave, because you're going to be leaving so fast, you're not going to have time to bake your matzah. And I'm telling you that 2 weeks in advance. So what good Jewish mother at that point is not going to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to start baking now and put something in the freezer or whatever. Maybe they didn't have freezer, okay? So that question bothered me. And finally, I had to look around and see what the commentaries explain about this. And what I realized is there was a message that had to be taken away from the matzah that had to accompany them at the time of redemption. And what's that message? And to me, this is what Pesach is all about. This is the message of Pesach. Let's see how we do it. The message is that at the time of redemption, do not delay. The moment of redemption, there's no time to waste. Now, that can be understood on a national level. Nationally, that can be understood in Egypt. It's time to go. When it's time to go, go. You don't waste time. When redemption is in front of you, when that door opens, when that iron door opens, that has been shut in front of you for however long, for a very long time, when that door creaks open, you run through that door. You don't ask any questions. You don't think. You don't make calculations. Just run through that door. Right? I think about this right now. Our neighborhood is flooding with Jews coming from Ukraine and Russia, refugees. actually interesting. I was expecting Ukrainian refugees. Turns out there's quite a few Russian refugees also, Jews who are leaving Russia, because we had a young man and his mother over for Shabbos. The father wasn't there. The reason the father wasn't there is because he wasn't able to get out. But the mom said, we're leaving. If we can get out, we're leaving. And they were able to get out because he's 21 and she was afraid that they were going to conscript him and force him to fight in the war, this horrible war that nobody wants to be fighting. Right? So the door opened and they left. They jumped out and got out. So in the time of redemption, when there's an opportunity for redemption, you don't take out your calculator and start making decisions. What makes the most sense? You know, my father always told me, you have an important decision to make in life. Take a yellow piece of paper. He doesn't understand, but there's something called Excel and spreadsheets, whatever. And you draw a line in the middle, and you draw on the top, and you write pros and your cons, and you start making your, as we say in Yiddish, cheshbonos. You start making your calculations, and then you figure it all out, and then you come out with your decision. When the time of redemption happens and the door opens, you don't take out the yellow piece of paper and start making a cost-benefit analysis. You jump through the door. You jump through the door. And that was the message of Pesach. So yes, they knew in advance, but they weren't allowed to prepare in advance to make the bread, because so that every year when we eat matzah at the Passover Seder, we'll remember this idea that when the time of redemption comes, you go. You go. When the door opens, you go. And that's true, obviously, on a national level, but that's also true on a personal level in life. Right? We have opportunity. There are moments in life. They don't happen very often. They're rare. They're few and they're far between. But doors, iron gates that have been holding us back in our lives from achieving something, from reaching something, from going to a new level, for raising ourselves to becoming more developed, deeper, more whatever, spiritual human beings. Those doors open once in a while. And when those doors open, your job is just to run through that door without making any type of cost-benefit analysis. And if you don't, the door doesn't stay open forever. The door closes. And that door closes, and when that door closes, you may never, ever have another opportunity to run through that door again. So when it comes time for redemption, the message of Passover, the message of eating the matzah is not, they didn't have time for the dough to rise. There was plenty of time for the dough to rise. Hashem instructed Moshe to tell the people, don't let the dough rise. Don't allow the dough to rise. Leave quickly so that you'll teach the future Jewish people for all generations that in life, when we have opportunities, we have to take those opportunities and run through the door. Now, this is true like throughout Jewish history, even in recent times. There are many examples of this. In 1948, I love studying Israel's modern history because it's the most fascinating thing in the world. You have these people who had no idea what they were doing. They were Holocaust survivors. They were people who had suffered from the most unimaginable horrors of history. And now all of a sudden they're trying to create a state and trying to create a country and trying to create a government. And you had people making decisions that were not, seasoned politicians. They were not people that had studied diplomacy in universities. They were just Jews who were trying to figure out how to make it work. And they made certain decisions along the way. In 1948, in May, we're coming up next week, is Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israel Independence Day. It was May 14, 1948, the day that the British mandate ended in Israel. And on that day, David Ben-Gurion said, we're going to declare a state of Israel today. And everybody said, including the United States, don't do it. The second you declare independence, the war for your very existence will begin. And they said, we don't support you. Even America said, we don't support you declaring independence. The whole world said, not now. Now is not the right time. And you know what David Ben-Gurion said? He said, matzah. When the door opens a little bit, when the time of redemption approaches, you have to jump through that door. And if you don't, the door may never open again. And on May 14th, 1948, David Ben-Gurion declares independence. We are now officially declaring the independent state of Israel. And if he had not done that at that moment, who knows? Who knows if there'd be an Israel today? Who knows if that opportunity would have come along again? Another example of this, which is There's a book which is a fascinating book called Prime Ministers. Has anyone read the Prime Ministers? One of the best books ever written about Israel. Such an amazing book. It was written by Yehuda Avner, who was one of the speechwriters and diplomats who involved in like many of the prime ministers of Israel, from going back from I think Golda Meir all the way through David Ben-Gurion and later. I mean, all the way through Menachem Begin and later. But he writes their story of 1967 during the Six-Day War. Israel had no intention of getting involved in that war. They didn't want to be involved in the war. They certainly didn't have any notion that they were going to, manage to expand the size of their country, to win the war, to defeat Egypt in the south, Syria and Lebanon in the north, Jordan in the east in 6 days. And they told King Hussein, like, don't get involved. If you don't start with us, we won't start with you. And of course, King Hussein didn't listen because he threw the propaganda from Nasser in Egypt that Nasser was telling King Hussein that Egyptian tanks are rolling into Tel Aviv. And King Hussein said, well, if I don't get involved now, he also knew the lesson of Nasser. If I don't jump through the door now, I'm going to miss my opportunity, to grab what I can of Israel. So he got involved and started sending missiles into Jerusalem, and Israel started fighting back. And at one point, the IDF, the Israeli Air Force, was standing ready over Jerusalem, ready to liberate the old city and the Kotel and the Western Wall and the Mount and the Temple Mount, and they weren't going to do it. They weren't going to do it because they thought it would be too risky, and they didn't know. And Menachem Begin called an emergency meeting of the Parliament of the Knesset, and he basically gave this passionate speech and said, if we don't liberate the old city and the Western Wall, the Temple Mount now, Jewish history will never forgive us for this. We have this opportunity. We are the generation. We are the few people that can make this decision right now. And if we don't do it, and we have the opportunity, we don't do it, they'll never forgive us. And at that moment, they made the decision. They fought. They went into the Lion's Gate. They liberated the old city. They liberated the Western Wall. They liberated Temple Mount, Harabayah B'Yadenu. The Temple Mount is in our hands. And that's how we have Jerusalem today, the old city. Had they not taken that moment, at that very, very critical moment, had they not done it, who knows? Would we have Jerusalem today? Would we have the Western Wall? Would we have, would we have the old city? Would we have access to Hebron and all these places where Jewish history began? So there are times in history, and there are times in our own personal lives where we have opportunities and they open up for us. And it doesn't end. It doesn't end when you can never say, well, I'm retired, or I have my children already, or I'm not involved in my career anymore. I've finished that part of my life. That's not true. That's just not true. In life, always in life, whatever stage you're at in life, there are opportunities that come along. And those are moments of personal redemption, moments of opportunity of personal breakthrough. The message of Pesach is we have to know that when those opportunities, when those moments come along, we have to recognize them, we have to identify them, and we have to act. And if we don't, those opportunities will probably never come back again. That's the time of redemption. You don't calculate. You don't make cost-benefit analysis. You go through the door. That was like an eye-opening insight for me for Pesach, and I've been thinking about that a lot, and really trying to internalize this idea and think about what this means in my own life and what this means, for my children, and trying to help them understand this idea too. So that was something that I wanted to share. There's we didn't get to do it this year. This year was strange because the actual holiday came out on Shabbos, right? So the second day. So there was no Shabbos in the middle of Pesach this year. Usually you get what's called the Shabbos Kol HaMoed, which is a Shabbos in the middle of Pesach. And when we have that, there's a special Haftorah that we read. Really interesting Haftorah. It's the Haftorah of Ezekiel's vision of the dry bones. You ever hear the vision of the dry bones? You know the song, bone. Okay, so that's based on a Haftorah from the prophet Ezekiel. The prophet Ezekiel is told to go into the valley in the north of Israel, and go into the valley, and he goes there and he has a vision. He has a prophecy. He sees something. What does he see? He sees a valley filled with dry bones, and these are like just bones, skeletons. And then when God says to him, "What do you see?" And he says, "I see sinews growing on the bones. Now I see flesh growing on the bones. And now I see these bones coming alive." And he has this prophecy, this vision of what's called the revival of these skeletons. It's a very, very famous prophecy, Ezekiel's vision of the dry bones. You can read more about it. You can read it. It's fascinating. I think it's chapter 30, maybe. So what's the meaning and message of this prophecy that he has? So obviously, something deep and mystical like that. Everybody's curious about it. Everybody's writing about it. All the commentators are talking about it. But there seems to be a pretty much an agreement among the commentaries that the message of Ezekiel's prophecy was Ezekiel was prophesizing about the future of the Jewish people. That even though at the time of Ezekiel's prophecy, the Jewish people were in exile, the temple had been destroyed, and the Jewish people were sent into exile. They were in Babylon, and it looked very bleak at that time for the future of the Jewish people. It looked like they were, the nail had been put into the coffin once and for all, and this was going to be the end of the Jewish people. And at that point, Ezekiel has this prophecy where he sees these bones being revived, and he sees the flesh and everything coming back to life. And the prophecy was that the Jewish people will come alive again in the future. That there'll be what's called a Techiyat HaMetim, a resurrection, a revival of the dead, not just as individuals that we believe in as part of Jewish philosophy, but also as the nation, as a nation. In fact, a lot of people refer to what's happened in the last 100 years as the fulfillment of that prophecy of Ezekiel. Ezekiel's prophecy coming alive, the Jewish people reborn from the ashes of the Holocaust. Literally the ashes of the Holocaust. I mean, if you had asked anybody in 1945, how does the future look for the Jewish people? In Europe at least, they would have said, done. Hitler did his job. Hitler put an end to it. There's no future of the Jewish people. Once and for all, the final solution has been carried out. Now, Hitler himself knew that wasn't true, because Hitler writes in his own writings in Mein Kampf that we have to eliminate every single last living Jew on this planet, because as long as there's one Jew left alive, he'll germinate, repopulate, and bring the nation, bring Jews back into this world. So Hitler understood that. The final solution meant every single last Jew. But if you'd gone to anyone in 1945 and said, "Where's the future of the Jewish people?" It's over, it's done. Hitler killed 6 million Jews in Europe. There's nothing really much left. And here you are 3 years later, and all of a sudden there's an independent state in the land of Israel. And then here we are 70 years later, or 75 years later, and look where we are today. The Jewish people are stronger than we've been, and certainly in Israel. So that's the revival of the Jewish people. That's what Ezekiel was prophesying. But there's a very interesting discussion in the Talmud about that prophecy. So there's a question that's brought up in the Talmud. What happened to those people that were revived in the valley in the north in Ezekiel's prophecy? What happened to them? What became of them? So there's 2 opinions brought in the Gemara. One is the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, and that is that they stood up, they were alive for a few moments, they sang songs of praise, shira, songs of gratitude and praise to Hashem, and then they died again. They went back down and they died again, and that was the end of their little momentary revival. That's one opinion. The second opinion is the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Rabbi Yossi HaGalili, a different Rabbi Eliezer in the Talmud, and he says, no, that's not what happened at all. He says they woke up, they were revived, and they got married, and they had children, and they produced families, and then someone comes along in the Talmud and says, I'm actually a descendant of one of those people that was Ezekiel revived in the valley, and I have the tefillin, the to fill in for my great-great-grandfather who was one of those people. Okay, and that's the end of the discussion. You read that in the Talmud, you're like, what the heck is going on over here? What does this even mean? So, maybe 5 years ago, I think we were in Jerusalem. I don't. All the trips kind of meld together in my mind. So I don't remember which trip was which, but who remembers a trip where we sat with Rabbi Beryl Wine in his shul in the third meal in Jerusalem, right? Remember that? Remember that trip? You guys were there too, right? So we sat with Rabbi Beryl Wine, and he was talking about this. He's a very famous Jewish historian, and he was talking about this section in the Talmud, and he said that what's going on over here is the Talmud is describing. They're both true. Both opinions are true. In other words, some people got up, they were revived, they sang praises to Hashem, and they went back to sleep. And others woke up and they got married, and they built families, and they rebuilt generations. He said there have been two types of Jews throughout Jewish history. There are certain types of Jews that when something huge happens, and he used the 6-day war for the example because it was the 50th anniversary of the 6-day war when we were there that week. And he said there are some people who read in June of 1967, they were in America, they were in Chicago, they were in New York, they were in Miami, and they read about the miracles of the 6-day war, and they stood up and they sang praises to Hashem. They said, wow, this is incredible. Look what happened. Look at these miracles. The Jewish people survived. We thought we were going to be destroyed. We thought Israel was going to be destroyed. They were digging graves in all the parks, and mass graves in all the parks in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv because they were expecting tens of thousands, if not more, of casualties. And all of a sudden, 6 days later, not only did we survive, but we captured the Golan and Jerusalem, and they were so blown away by this, and they sang praises and they praised Hashem, and then they went back to sleep. They went back to their lives, and they didn't make any real changes. Nothing significant happened. They went back to sleep. And he said, and there were certain Jews who read the same headlines in the newspaper in June of 1967, and they woke up and they said, whoa, wait a minute. These are miracles that we've witnessed in our own lifetime. These are earth-shattering cataclysmic events that Hashem has changed the whole world. I've got to do something about it. And they stayed up, they stayed awake, and they got married, and they had children, and they built future generations. Now, I remember when I got to yeshiva in Jerusalem in 1993, I met one of my teachers who became a very close mentor of mine, Rabbi Horowitz. And Horowitz he told me the story. I asked him how he got to Jerusalem. He didn't grow up religious. He didn't grow up particularly Zionistic or observant or anything. And he told me that in 1967, he was a lawyer. He was what do they call them? The army JAG. Is that what they called? An army attorney, right? He was a JAG in the army. He lived in Baltimore, and he was. It was the summer of 1967, and he was following what was going on in Israel, and he was reading the stories of about what was happening during the 6-day war. And when it was over, and the 6-day war was over, he said, "This is incredible. I can't believe what's going on." He put on a yarmulke. He'd never worn a yarmulke in his life. He put on a yarmulke, and within 6 months, he picked up and he moved to Jerusalem. So I always think of him as being an example of somebody who said, you know what, at the time of redemption, you don't wait, you don't delay. The door opened up for him, and now he's been living in Jerusalem for whatever it is, 55 years now, in the same place basically from when he got married. He has generations, children, grandchildren, great grandchildren that are all living there, and these are the opportunities that come along. Now I've been talking about big, huge examples, but just in our own lives, little things happen, little opportunities. And we're all, to a certain degree, we're human beings. We're afraid, as by definition, we're afraid of change. And we're certainly afraid of the unknown. Nobody likes to go somewhere that you've never been before, into a place, uncharted area, uncharted territories in our lives, in our emotional lives, in our relationships, in our practical lives. We like what we know, because we know it, we have pretty much control, or at least we think we have control over what we know. What we don't know, we have no control over. And that's scary. And there's a huge resistance built into the human psyche that stops us from, seizing these moments in life, seizing these opportunities, because we very quickly start to come up with a whole bunch of cons about why this isn't a good idea. Maybe I should just keep the job that I have, even though I've been here working in this job for 20 years and I've been miserable and I don't like it and it doesn't inspire me and I don't feel like it taps into who I am, but I'm afraid to go out on my own. I'm afraid to be that, try that idea that I've always dreamed of trying. And then all of a sudden an opportunity comes along and I have this chance to do something new or do something different. And it's an amazing opportunity. And I sit there in front of the door, in front of that window of opportunity. And as I'm about to jump through, I start to think about, well, what if this, and what if I do this, and what if it doesn't work out, and I'm afraid of it. And then by the time I'm finished thinking about it and contemplating it, doors closed. And that's life. That's what happens in life. Pesach challenges us, ultimately challenges us to be able to jump through that door when that opportunity comes. I'll give you one more example, and then I want to stop and hear from other people. But in the Song of Songs, which is also connected to Passover, because King Solomon, the son of King David, wrote the Song of Songs, Shir HaShirim. It's one of the most beautiful sections of the entire Tanakh, the entire Hebrew Bible. It's written in the form of allegory, in the form of parable. It sounds like a love story. In fact, it sounds like a very racy and romantic love story between a man and his lover. And that's how it reads, and that's how it's written. But Rashi and everybody and all the commentators explain that it's all a parable. It's all meant to be understood on the level of allegory, and it's really describing our relationship with Hashem. So in this parable, in this story of Song of Songs, the lover, the woman in the song, is the Jewish people, and the paramour, the man, the man in this love story is Hashem. So it's all a big parable for the love relationship between the Jewish people and Hashem. And in that Song of Songs, there's one refrain that keeps going through over and over and over again, which is Kol Dodi Dofek, which means the voice of my beloved is knocking. The basic story is that there's this woman who has been, like, let's say, unfaithful maybe to her husband or to her lover, and he leaves, and he disappears, and he's gone, and she lies in bed every night regretting what she's done and repenting and doing tshuva and hoping and yearning that one day her lover is going to return. And then one day, while she's lying in bed, there's a knock at the door. And who is it? It's her lover. He's returned. And what does she say? She says, "I'm already in bed. I'm tired. I can't open the door right now." And he knocks again. And she says, I'm too tired. I don't think I can't get up. I don't have the energy. 6 times, the lover knocks on the door, and 6 times she makes an excuse why she can't get out of bed, and then the knocking stops and disappears and he's gone. Right? And the Soloveitchik wrote an essay called Kol Dodi Dofek, and he applies that to all of Jewish history. And the 6 knocks are 6 different times in Jewish history, in recent Jewish history, where Hashem has knocked at the door and said, like, here, I'm back. The opportunity has returned to restore this relationship that that you've been longing for and yearning for so long. And each time the lover is too weary from the night to respond and to open the door. And he leaves that as a challenge to us, like in our own lives. When the lover is knocking at the door, the lover that we've been yearning for and hoping for and dreaming for, which whatever that is, for each of us, there's a different lover in this allegory. Whatever it is, it's that moment, it's that opportunity, it's that challenge for breakthrough that we've been yearning for in our own lives. And if we're listening, we can hear that the lover's knocking on the other side of the door, right there, right behind the door. And the question that we have to ask ourselves is, are we making an excuse? Why am I not getting up to open the door? Why am I, what's holding me back? Am I making, in my own life, I'm making excuses not to reach my own personal greatness, not to become the person that I know I have the opportunity to become. And that's this, what the Song of Songs is challenging us. And that's read on Pesach, on the first day of Pesach, because that's, again, ties into this theme of what Passover is all about. When the time of redemption comes, we have to be ready to be able to go through that door and not take out this sheet of paper and start making all the calculations, the pros and cons. Because by the time we're done making that calculation, the door is probably going to close again. I think that's, for me, that was like a new insight this year about what Passover meant. And when we talk about, I made it through Passover, did Passover make it through me? Like, I feel like that, that's something that I can take with me into the year and try to like keep me moving along the year, take the energy of Passover and bring it with me into the year. And now we're in this next phase where we're connecting Passover to what's coming up, which is Shavuos. And Shavuos is 49 days after Passover. And that's the ultimate conclusion of the redemption. That's when we received the Torah. We didn't leave Egypt just to be a free nation. We left Egypt so that we could receive the Torah and become God's nation. We left Egypt so that we could leave the slavery and the servitude to the Egyptians and exchange it for servitude towards Hashem. That relationship, that ultimate connection, relationship with Hashem that comes through the Torah. So now we're moving into the period of the sphere of counting of the Omer. We're moving towards Shavuos, the holiday of Shavuos, when we receive the Torah. And these days are real growth opportunity days, powerful days in the calendar for growth, for change. Passover is called the time of our redemption, but it's really not. It doesn't end with Passover, it begins with Passover. Talmud says that truly free person, who is the truly free person? The truly free person is the person that has a deep connection to Torah, because the Torah is what guides us and teaches us how to become the people that we have the potential to be, how to reach true freedom. So we left Egypt without a Torah, received the Torah 49 days later, on the 50th day, and that's the conclusion of this freedom period. So we're still in it. We're still in this period of freedom. It began with Pesach, but it's building. Maybe I'll say one more thing and then I'll stop. And then I want to hear from everybody else. I really do. The counting of the Omer is funny because the idea of counting the days between Passover and Shavuos, it says in the book of Sefer Achinuch, which is a classic medieval book that comments, that goes through all the mitzvot, the Torah, the 613 commandments, and elaborates on them and explains them and tells you what the philosophy behind each mitzvah is, what they mean, what they're about, what they represent, the philosophy. So when it comes to this mitzvah of counting the Omer, counting the days between Passover and Shavuot, it says that the reason why we count is because just like, if a servant finds out that he's going free at a certain amount of time, he anticipates that day. If, let's say, someone knows they've been in jail and their sentence is ending in 50 days, they know in 50 days they're going to go free. So they count those days because it's a countdown to freedom. So we're counting the days between Passover and Shavuos because we're counting down the days to our freedom, to the day where we truly reach liberation. Right, that's the question. Where we truly reach liberation by receiving the Torah. So that's beautiful. That's a beautiful concept. But if that's true, as Sue was pointing out, then why are the way we count seems to be the opposite of how we should be counting. Instead of counting up, like we count last night, it was the 10th day. Tonight we'll count 11, 12, 13, 14. We're counting up. We should be counting down, right? I mean, it's already May. So I guarantee you can go to almost any kid, in grade school and ask them how many days left in the school year, and they'll say, 33 or whatever it is, 32, 31. They're counting down to the moment of freedom. So if this is all about counting down to the moment of our spiritual liberation, this counting of the Omer should be going in the opposite direction, not up but down. So the truth is that we're not counting down. We are counting up. And there's a difference. Let's say there are two people. I've used this example before, but let's say there are two people, and both Reuven and Shimon, and each one, Reuven and Shimon, is told, you're going to have you're going to get a gift of $100,000, $100,000. But to Reuven, he says, okay, look, in 100 days from now, you're going to get $100,000 as a free gift, right? And to Shimon, it said that he's told, you're also going to get $100,000, but you're going to get $1,000 a day for the next 100 days. Each one, in the end of 100 days, ends up with $100,000. Okay, the first guy is wait 100 days, and you'll get a check for $100,000. The second person is $1,000 a day for the next 100 days. Same exact, I'm not great at math, but it works out the same. $100,000 for each one. Okay, so let's think about it. For the first person, that 100 days, does it seem like a short 100 days or a long 100 days? In 100 days from now, you're going to get $100,000. So long, you're just sitting there waiting, anticipating, right? Come on, 100 days, it's going to feel like an eternity. For the second person who's being handed $1,000 every single day, a check for $1,000 every day, is that 100 days going to go by slowly or go by very quickly? Going to speed by? What? It's over already. That was 100 days? No way. Sure. That was 2 weeks. That could be 100 days. No way. Okay. So what's the difference? For the first person, the time is not relevant to the gift. It's just a barrier between me and the gift. It's just in the way. So if it's in the way, I have to get it over with. The time is just something standing in between me and receiving the gift. So that it's there, and I gotta push through it, but it's not working to my benefit, and it's just going to be annoying. So it's a long period of time, and it's going to feel like a very long period of time. For the second person, each day is another $1,000. Each day is a gift. Each day is a new gift. It's a new level of gift, and it's going to go by very, very quickly. Okay, so that's, by the way, the reason why Jacob says, I worked for Rachel for 7 years, and it seemed like a few days because I loved her so much. Huh? If you loved her so much, those 7 years should have seemed like an eternity. You loved her so much, you had to wait 7 years to marry her. 7 years of work before you could marry her. And he said it went by like that in a few days because you loved her so much. Does it make sense? If you loved her so much that, imagine you don't see your loved one for 7 years, it's unbearable. So the answer is that Jacob understood that he and his wife Rachel were going to be the next patriarch and matriarch of the Jewish people. He understood that he had a tremendous amount of work on himself that he needed to do in order to get to that place. And each day during those 7 years, he was working on himself, trying to develop a new dimension of his spiritual abilities, his personality, his emotional world. And he was working on himself and working on himself and working on himself every single day for 7 years. Because he loved Rachel so much, he wanted to be the very, very best he could be before he married her. So he was working so hard on himself that he was like being handed a check every single day for $1,000, right? Every single day. Wow, I developed a new dimension of my personality today. So it's going to go by super fast. It went by so fast, you couldn't believe that was 7 years already. So with the period of the time between the Pesach and Shavuos, these are days of building. It's no coincidence, by the way, that I know you guys studied with Ali for a long time, the 48 ways. 48 ways are meant to be studied during this period of time. You study a way a day, and on the 49th day, you review all 48 days, and then you're ready for Pesach. Because these days are days that we work on ourselves to build ourselves in preparation to receive the Torah again on Shavuos. So because of that, we're not counting down. It's not like 49 days left until we get the Torah, 48 days left. We're building up. I've worked on myself and I've developed myself for 1 day now. Oh, now I've done it for 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, and we build up and we build up. These are days that are super powerful and have tremendous potential for growth and development. So we should really take advantage of these days and figure out how we're going to use them. There's still 40 of them left. 40 out of 50. We're only a fifth of the way in. So, and think about the messages of Pesach that we learned in our breakthroughs from Pesach and how to make them real. Because breakthroughs are great, but if you don't concretize it and make it real, then it's just another one of my great moments of breakthrough in my mind that never actually turned into anything because I didn't make it happen in a real way. That's what these days are about. So I wanted to hear from, did anybody else have like a breakthrough, like a Pesach breakthrough this year? Did anyone else have something that they were thinking about over Pesach that was like a theme, something that was resonating for them, something that they would want to share with the group that could be another example of like something that, that transformed me, transformed you from Pesach, that could be something that could inspire other people. Anyone have any the audience participation part of the morning? Before wasn't here. So we must have something. I know we're dealing with a deep crowd over here. What were the thoughts? Like, what was going through your mind? Or what can I work? What can I be focusing? What can I be working on? You don't have to. No one has to share, but. Fine. Okay, so we can stop it. But anyone have anything else that they want to thoughts about this? Marsha. Wait, where'd you grow up again? Just kidding. Yeah, go ahead. The candied ones the jellied ones, yeah. Those are very Jewish. No non-Jew would ever eat one of those. Very, very wise. Those are great memories. My next door neighbor in Deer Run, I saw him he's a Jewish guy, not outwardly observant in any particular way. And I saw him during the middle of Pesach. It was last year, maybe 2 years ago, last year, and comes out and he goes, "Oh, I love Passover, but I can't wait for it to end." Like fourth day, fifth day. I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I'm a big wine drinker, and I drink wine every night. I have a couple glasses of wine every night, and I can't stand it. I can't drink this Manischewitz anymore. It's so hard." And I looked at him and was like, "But what do you mean?" Like, "Well, we keep Passover. The Passover we keep Pesach, we keep Passover, so I can only drink this Manischewitz wine." I'm like, "Do you not know that there are like 500 wineries in Israel with some of the most highest end award-winning wines?" He's like, "What do you mean? I thought the only kosher wine was Manischewitz." So I bought him a bottle of this Beit El wine, which is like a delicious wine. So like, an expensive bottle of wine. I gave it the bottle of his house. He's like, "You've changed my life." No idea that there was like real high end, kosher for Pesach wines. For Moses, no one ever told him. No one ever told him. He didn't get the memo. Uh-oh. Oh, there are people that were trying to get in. I didn't see that. Should we start over? Yeah. Oh, that's not good. Yeah, that's why I'm not supposed to be doing this. Any other absolutely. You know, there's there is a not coincidental connection between the word mitzvah and matzah. They're spelled mitzvot and matzot are spelled exactly the same way. And in the word, there's an extra vav in the word mitzvah. And Talmud notices that and says, don't, it says, you shouldn't let your matzah become chametz, right? And in the Torah, it says, don't let your matzah become chametz. Don't let your matzah ferment. The Talmud says, al tikrei matzot of a mitzvah. Don't only read that verse in the Torah to mean don't let your matzah ferment, but also read it to mean don't let your mitzvahs ferment. And it says, mitzvah haba liyadcha al tachtitzena. The message is that when a mitzvah comes into your hand, don't let it become chametz. Right? Don't delay. So for sure, when it comes to mitzvahs, opportunities like that, I let a mitzvah become a matzah last two weeks ago, and I was so upset about it afterwards. I was at the gas station near my house, filling up my car with gas, which, by the way, you have to take out a mortgage on your home to do in Israel. And I see now that you have to do it here too. You have to take out a mortgage here too. $4.50 a gallon, but it's still not here. I didn't see in Highland Park. Maybe it's 5. In Deerfield, it's 4.5, whatever. But in Israel, it's $8. $8 a gallon, double. Right. So you know, it's not a simple thing. Fill up your car with gas at $8 a gallon. But I'm filling up my car with gas, and there's this guy at the gas station in front of me. And he comes over to me and he says, I don't have any money to fill up my car with gas. Can you help me? Can you fill up my car for me? You know, and I was like, hurry, and I wasn't in the right mindset, and I was just focused on what I was trying to do. And I'm like, in Jerusalem, people ask me all day, everywhere you go, people ask me for money. And it's like, look, I can't or whatever. And he's like, okay, I understand. And he left. And right afterwards, I'm like, why did I do that? I should have just helped him fill up his car. It's Pesach, stressful time for everybody. Pesach's so expensive. And I got in the car afterwards and I drove around trying to find the guy, and I couldn't find him. And that was it. I turned a mitzvah into I turned the matzah into a chametz. I turned the mitzvah into chametz. So you're right. He was gone. Maybe he was Elijah the prophet, and I missed the opportunity to bring the redemption. Yeah. I was planning on it. I'll tell you a story, and then we finish. There's an idea talking about Elijah the prophet. Elijah the prophet, is this great figure in Jewish folklore, not folklore, I mean, he's a real person, but Jewish writing, Jewish mysticism, and Hasidic teachings. Elijah the prophet represents the ultimate in spiritual clairvoyance, the ability to see Elijah the prophet. The great Hasidic masters were always yearning to see Elijah the prophet. That was like the dream that every great tzaddik had. I want to see Elijah the prophet. If you were one of the few people on earth who merited to see Elijah the prophet, you were one of the great spiritual giants of the generation. So one of the Hasidim, one of the followers of Baal Shem Tov, founder of the Hasidic movement, once came to Baal Shem Tov and he said, look, Rebbe, I really, really, really want to see Eliyahu Hanavi. I've got to see Elijah the prophet. I've been fasting. I've been praying. I've been doing mitzvot. I've been doing chesed. I'm working on myself my whole life. All I want is to see Elijah the prophet. And the Baal Shem Tov saw that this guy was really earnest and for real and yearning to see Elijah the prophet. So he said, okay, here's what I want you to do. There's a village not far from here. It's Erev Pesach. It's Pesach Seder is tonight. I want you to load up your wagon with all the provisions for Pesach, matzah, wine, food, meat, everything, and go to this particular hut in this particular village and bring them everything for Pesach. Meanwhile, in this particular hut, in this particular village, there's a family there, a poor family that is totally stressing out because tonight is Pesach, and they have no idea. They don't have money to buy matzah. They don't have money to buy wine. They don't have anything. So they're in their house. They're crying. They're sad. We're not going to be able to have Passover this year. We're not going to be able to make a Seder. And at that moment, there's a knock on the door. And who is it? It's this chassid, the specific guy who'd been sent by the Baal Shem Tov. And he opens up the door and he says, I have food for you for Pesach. And they invite him in and he spends Passover with them. And it's beautiful and it's inspiring. And they're eating and they're rejoicing and they're singing. And it was so wonderful. And he kept waiting. When am I going to see Eliyahu Hanavi? It must be coming any minute. I'm going to see Elijah the prophet. Passover ends. And, the first 2 days of Passover ends. It's over. The holiday's over. No Elijah, no prophecy, no revelation. And he goes home back to Mezhbish, where in the Ukraine, where the Baal Shem Tov lived. And he said, Rebbe, his Rebbe, Baal Shem, how was it? How was Pesach? It was great. It was beautiful. It was lovely, but I didn't see Elijah the prophet. What happened? They said, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to load up the cart again. And I want you to go back for the second days of Passover, for the last 2 days, and go back to the same hut, to the same village, same shtetl. But this time I want you to go, and I want you to wait outside the door and listen, tell me, and come back and tell me what you hear. So he goes there, he goes to the village, he goes to the shtetl, he gets to the hut, and he listens, he hears the little child, it's right before Yontif. The little child says to his mom, Mommy, do you think Elijah the prophet's going to come again today like he did last week and bring us food for Yontif? And when he came back, the Baal Shem Tov said, what did you hear? And he told him everything he heard. He said, sometimes in life, you want to see Eliyahu Hanavi, and sometimes in life, you have to be Eliyahu. And the real challenge is life. To see Eliyahu Hanavi, okay, great, you're a tzaddik, you're a prophet, but to be Eliyahu Hanavi, to be the person that's bringing that goodness and that warmth and that love and that joy into other people's lives, that's higher than seeing Eliyahu Hanavi. Don't see Eliyahu Hanavi, be Eliyahu Hanavi. Okay, that's it. That's what I got.
Is tonight your classes?
Yes, tonight, 7 o'clock.
Tonight.
Back-to-back classes here. I don't think we're Zooming them. So,
Okay.
yeah. So, try to be here for that if you can. It's going to be fun.
Okay.
And if you can't make it tonight, we'll do it again later on Zoom. So there'll be another chance to. Okay. Take care. Bye, everybody.